Today's soap is a blend of frankincense and myrrh with lavender and tea tree. It's a great soap for psoriasis, eczema, or any kind of skin condition you might have. I'll list the recipe in the description box below, and we'll get on with making soap. Here I'm measuring out my oils. It doesn't matter how you start. I use a blend of olive oil and coconut oil and castor oil and shea butter as well. But it doesn't matter which one you start with, and we'll melt these oils down in the crock pot and get them to a temperature where they'll all blend together and be mixed together. It's usually around 180 to 200 degrees. I don't really test the temperature or anything, but once it's melted, that's when I'll start making the soap. But you have to be very precise in your measurements, because this is a chemical reaction between the oil and the lye, so it has to be very precise. It's kind of like baking a cake. If you forget to put in your baking soda or baking powder, it won't rise. And it's the same thing if you have too much oil or not enough, or it become lye heavy, or all different things. So you have to really follow your soap recipes. And like I said, I will definitely put that down in the description box below. This recipe is for 5 pounds, for a 5-pound block of soap. If you want to make it smaller and use the same ingredients, just take your amount of oils that you have and go to the soapcalculator.net, and you just plug in your oils and it'll tell you how much lye and water that you'll need. Anytime that somebody gives you a soap recipe, that's basically what you'll do, is you'll just take, unless you're going to follow it right to the T, but if you have a smaller amount that you want to make, or if you ever go to the cupboard and you find out you only have 20 ounces of olive oil and it called for 27, you can change that a little bit on the soap calculator, and it will it'll let you know how much lye that you'll need. So you always have to run your soap through a soap calculator. I do it even if I get a normal recipe, and I just go and put it through there just so I have it, and then you can print it out too. But I'm cutting my shea butter here, putting it in, making sure I use 4 ounces of shea butter. It makes it really thick and creamy. Like, your soap is so rich and creamy. And this is 5% super fatted, which means about 5% of the oil is going to come through the soap at the end. So your skin and everything will be able to absorb all those oils. If you have a higher percent of super fat, it just takes longer for it to cure, and it can be a softer soap. And there I'm adding castor oil. I love castor oil. Not only is it really good for your skin, but it also adds the bubbly to your soap. I mean, coconut oil does too, but my ratio of coconut oil to olive oil, I need it a little extra bubbly, so I always add the castor oil. Now here I'm measuring out my water, and I use frozen goat's milk. I pour my goat's milk into ice cube trays, and then I just use it that way. That way it doesn't get scorched by the lye. The goat's milk, the amount of goat's milk that I use will be in the description box below. Sometimes at different recipes I use a little bit more, because I want it to be, a little bit thicker or creamier or something. But for the most part, my bases are always the same. Then I add the water to bring it up to the amount of water and goat's milk that we needed. When you run it through the soap calculator, it's just going to give you, I think mine's 24.7 for the water, and it's going to you're going to have to deduct, like if I put in 7 ounces of goat milk, then I'm going to put in 20 ounces of water. So you just, deduct whatever you put in there. Like if I make pumpkin and I add pumpkin puree, frozen pumpkin or something, then I would just deduct it from my water. Okay, I'm doing the lye here, and I did find gloves finally. We were on such a glove shortage forever. I had to mix a lot of lye without any gloves, but I'm glad to have them. And you have to be very careful with when you pop off the top of the lye, it goes everywhere. And a lot of people use lye that's like sold by soap making companies, soap supply companies. I just buy mine at Walmart, and it's the lye that goes, you use for the toilet or the sewers and stuff, drains, but it doesn't matter as long as it's 100% lye. It's just 100% lye. I mean, that's not going to matter. And I found it was cheaper for me to buy it local and not have to pay shipping and stuff. It's definitely cheaper that way. So if you can find it, just ask your hardware store if they have 100% lye. It can't be like Drano or anything like that has lye in it along with chemicals. It has to be 100% pure lye. Which it was pretty easy for me to find. I find it at Ace Hardware, Walmart. I mean, we have hardware stores that have it everywhere. So, and the crystals just pop out everywhere, so you have to really clean them up. In fact, the other day, it was like 3 or 4 days, I had scrubbed the whole counter and everything, and I still found a crystal later and kind of burned my skin a little bit. Now you always pour, like I've said 1,000 times, lye into water, never water into lye. So you don't want to put your lye into your bigger jar and then measure your water into it. It can volcano up, and it's just dangerous. You never know what your lye is going to do. But if you pour it into water, it's just safer. So that's something I've always learned in soap making and have just stuck to it. Now the lye immediately starts to react and gets hard on the bottom. So as soon as you start stirring it, it'll break it up quickly and dissolve it a lot faster. If you pour your lye in and walk away, you come back later and you have this big hard candy-like clump down at the bottom, and it's really hard to break up and get it to dissolve. Now here I'm going to move. I always immediately rinse my lye cup. And rinse everything really well, because if you just leave it and you forget about it, anything could happen. Somebody could come drink out of it, or you could just forget. I mean, it's just not good. You should just rinse it immediately, because it's extremely caustic. Even when it's cooled down, it's caustic. So it'll burn you. It'll irritate your skin. I mean, temperature-wise, when you think, oh, lye will burn you, well, yeah, the temperature climbs up almost 300 degrees, but yeah, the temperature can burn you, but it also just starts like eating at your skin. So it like the fatty acids and stuff in your skin, it like eats away at that. So and vinegar always neutralizes lye, so always have vinegar on hand. Water does not neutralize it at all. Now here I'm checking the oils, make sure that they're melted down. The shea butter's always last to go. It's so solid. But I'm going to use a stick blender, so it doesn't matter. Now, if you're cold process making soap, you will want to make sure that your oils and your lye are within 30 degrees of each other, your lye water. And I found with hot processing soap that doesn't matter. Even though I was taught to still do that, I don't worry about it anymore. I don't even have a thermometer. I don't take temperatures on anything anymore. But now if you soap really hot, where your oils are like above 200, and you poured your really hot 300 degree lye water in there, it's going to accelerate to trace really fast. And it doesn't really hinder you as a hot process soap making, but if you are trying to like get honey in it before the cook or something, or you're wanting to do your charcoal or something like that, you're gonna have to work pretty quick. So I still try to keep everything as cool as possible. Now with this frankincense and myrrh, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to put essential oils in at the end, so it doesn't matter how fast it came to trace on me or anything like that. And I'll talk about the different levels of trace. I wrote a little tutorial, and I've got that for sale on Etsy, and I'll put that in the description box below too. It's 26 pages, but and it's a step-by-step how I make my soap and everything. And I think it's a lavender that I make through that tutorial. But learning your different steps of what your soap does from the time that you add the milk, the goat milk and water to the lye, and then that lye water to your oils, and that's when that chemical reaction is going to take place. It's good to know each, step, that the process that it's going to go through. So it goes through light trace, medium trace, heavy trace, a gel phase, which is actually, to me, the cook. And then you bring it back together after it gels, and it's pretty much made soap. And at the end, you'll have like a kind of like a mashed potato like look, but it has like a glassy sheen to it, almost like Vaseline. That's what we'll be looking for. But right here, it's just cooking. I just let it cook after I've blended it all together. Just let it cook and let it cook. This process can take anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. Now you can see how thick it's thickened up here. That's considered about medium to heavy trace right there. And it's got a little, it's going through its process, and it's got a little bit more to keep cooking. And I'll look for it'll start gelling on the sides where the heat is, and it'll just completely transform everything. It comes up real thick, like a thick pudding, and then all of a sudden it'll just go back real thin. Now, some soaps and some recipes don't really do that, so you just kind of have to learn it. And I started to make my mold, or line my mold, while I'm waiting for it to cook. I just line it with parchment paper. And that's all in my tutorial too. I've got how I make my mold and everything. Now this is really, really thick here. It's at its stage where it's going to absolutely change. It's so thick it's hard to stir. And this is definitely heavy trace. And it's got, it's not really coming up. Now I might turn the temperature up here. Sometimes when I come to gel really fast, I'll turn the temperature down of the crock pot. I'm never just, you set it on medium and you leave it there. You are switching temperature back and forth all the time. So you just have to get to feel and get to know your soap, and especially what you're looking for. That's the main thing. It's pretty thick here. I'll just let it do its thing and do a little bit more cooking. And here, I'd say about 10 or 15 minutes later, it has really come to a good softer gel phase, but it didn't go completely gel. Like sometimes it goes completely back to oil, and which if it does, I've had a lot of my students come to me and be like, I ruined my soap, it went to oil. And I'm like, no, that's just the gel phase. You just stick that, your stick blender's your lifesaver. You stick that stick blender in there and you blend it right back, and it's fine. Now this soap didn't do it. It didn't go to a complete gel phase. It just kind of went through its process, and it's not that thick hard stuff anymore. Now it's thin. I had to let my cat out. He was screaming. But what I'll do here is I will stick blend it just a little bit, even though I could stir it. And you can make soap without a stick blender, but it's a lot easier with a stick blender. But I'll go ahead and stick blend this and just kind of get it to come back to a thicker soap really fast. And it won't take too terribly long. I'll just stick blend it for about 2 or 3 minutes. And when my stick blender starts struggling a little bit, and I can hear it, and it's like getting trapped up in there, that's when I know it's time to kind of quit and maybe just start stirring it with a spoon and bringing it back that way. Now, what I do is I have a way, when you first start, you've only got the very middle stick blended and all the outside is kind of still the same, but as soon as you start stirring it like that, it starts incorporating it, and I don't know if that chemical reaction is doing it or what, but it starts bringing everything back together really fast. It's kind of neat. You can watch it right before your eyes just change, and it starts getting thicker and thicker and thicker, and it's a different consistency completely than heavy trace was. Heavy trace looks like pudding, like vanilla pudding, thick vanilla pudding. This process at the end will start looking like mashed potatoes. It will have like lumps and bumps and strange things in it and everything. Even when it's very hot and it keeps trying to go back to gel a little bit, it will still be lumpy. You can still see lumps in it. It won't be anything like before the cook. So you have mixed the oils with the lye water, and you've got your traces, then you've got the cook, and then you have the after part of the cook. And the after part of the cook looks like mashed potato, like Vaseline mashed potatoes. That's probably the best way to put it. Now here I'm rushing things a little bit on this soap. I'm going to go ahead and, usually with essential oils, they have a flash point. So you want to make sure your soap is cool enough to accept this essential oils and not burn them off. There's flash point charts all over the internet. You can look up for your certain essential oil that you want to use. I'm using 4 different essential oils in this one, and I think my soap's right around 200 degrees, so it's pretty hot. And I was in a hurry, and it's not good when you do this, but frankincense usually takes a pretty high heat. And you'll learn, even on their charts, they'll have really, really low flash points. But I've noticed some of my quality of essential oils will, they don't burn off as easily. So like if you have a really cheap essential oil, it can burn off really easy. I don't know if it has more hexane, alcohol, or whatever. I don't know what's in it, but whatever they do to the process to get the extract the essential oil. But here I'm adding the essential oils. Now in the recipe, I don't really it tells you on the soap calc recipe, it tells you like in fragrance oil. It doesn't tell you for essential oil, and essential oils are usually less amount that you have to use. And like, if it calls for 2 ounces of a fragrance oil, well, you would want to put 2 ounces of lavender into it. It's just too strong. So what I do is I've been doing it for years just by trial and error. But I go ahead and add it in, and I keep smelling my soap, and not just after you put it in, you got to stir it for a while and then smell it, and you'll get to where you'll know just how much to put in. Now here I'm molding my soap, and I just spoon it in. I can't really pour it in. You could lift it up and pour it in, but to me it's just too hard and too messy, and sometimes it blops all over this way or that way. I just don't like it. So I just do it this way and spoon it all in. And then once I get it in, I'm going to bang it on the ground, bang it on the counter to get all the air pockets out and everything. But it's a pretty easy process. It's just, you have to make more than one pot for sure. If your first pot doesn't come out very good, you just got to keep doing it, because my first pot didn't come out very good. My second pot didn't. My third pot started coming out better, and then better and better and better. And I've been making soap for 7 years now, so it's gotten a lot easier. Now I let my soap sit for about 12 hours, and that's when I unmold it and cut it. To me, that's the easiest. I mean, I wouldn't let it sit any longer than 72 hours. 48 hours would be like pushing it to me, but I know 72 hours would be all right. And then I let even hot process soap, cure for at least 2 to 3 weeks, but it just needs time, so that way it'll harden up a little bit and you won't blow through it in the shower or something. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like my video, subscribe to my channel, and for links to my shop, that'll be in the description box below.